All right, so this is the retrospective review of the Ibanez RG550 Genesis in Road Flare Red. I know it looks orange in this lighting, but it is Road Flare Red. I've already done a full review and a full mix demo of this guitar in a previous video, so if you haven't seen that and you're wondering about the details of this and the first impressions, go ahead, check that out. I'll be talking about how this guitar has been since making that review and through the tail end of using that, practicing on it, etc. This isn't sponsored. This is my guitar. I bought it. All the brands and stuff I'm mentioning in this video haven't given me anything or paid me any money to say things. I'm just a guy on the internet who clearly likes guitars. I do the casual online music thing, and this is my guitar. So I'll tell you how it's been through owning it. Let's jump right in. So playing the guitar, the setup on it, I mentioned I had to set it up a bunch of times in the review video. And the guitar must have heard me say that because ever since filming that one part, it hasn't budged. The setup's been pretty solid since then. Maybe it would be cliche for a reviewer to say, oh, this is now my best playing guitar, so I'm not going to say that. But this guitar does play pretty well, which I guess isn't really a surprise. The RG550 is kind of like an iconic guitar. It makes sense that they would both reissue it or have the Genesis thing, whatever you'd consider that as, but also that it would play really well too. And also I am a huge Ibanez fan, again, not sponsored. So yeah, the setup is stabilized. I've played it in some, both the first impressions, testing it out, writing and recording the demo song and performing it too. And I've already used it in an upcoming video that'll probably come out the day after this comes out, maybe. And I've been practicing on it too, if I haven't mentioned that already. It feels pretty good to play on. And now that it's getting played in, the super raw feel of the neck, it's starting to get that played in feel. So it's feeling really good. The notes are very satisfying to play. They sound up pretty well. And that's still true. I have mentioned I do prefer the stainless steel frets, but the nickel silver frets, they're pretty good too. You know, I'm a fan of guitars in general. I can play on the nickel silver frets without complaining. Just have to bring it up for the sake of detail and conversation. The guitar has been very usable. The body shape, the fact that it's the typical super strat, you can do super strat things on it. There's no weirdness going on with the fret inlays. You can see on the side, they're kind of small from here, but it is a maple fretboard, maple neck with the black side dots, and so the contrast is really good. I know the thing about the lumen lays, especially if you have a dark wood neck, like if you have a Wenge neck and you've got the lumen lays or black binding and the lumen lays, the glow in the dark inlays. Once they stop glowing in the dark, they're that kind of dark green, which is hard to see against dark colors. So this is pretty nice. And for some reason, and I think I can say this now that I'm no longer in the honeymoon phase, I've had the up, the down, and now back on the up. The body feels really comfortable to play, like to hold it, and playing the guitar feels it feels a little more natural than my other RGs. It's not quite as perfect to me as the RGA is. I've got the RGA with the low pro edge, so it's not quite that perfect. I'm always going to like that feel the best, but this feels pretty natural. And it might be just in the variations of when they finish off guitars, they have to like hand sand it or something. So whoever was sanding that day, maybe they sanded it in a way that I just prefer. Not saying that the other RGs I have are unusable or uncomfortable or anything. This one is just unusually fitting for when I sit or stand with it. It could also be the combination of that and the weight of the body too. It's very well balanced. It's Basswood. And Basswood is probably one of my favorite body materials. I just don't have too many guitars with it. I've got this one now. I have the first Prestige I got, the RG550 from 2013. And I have that other RG. It's like black with gold hardware. I can't remember the number of it. I'm sorry. But it's the Basswood, the black finish with the gold hardware and the Fishmans. And whenever I pick up those guitars, it does feel nice. It's not too heavy. It's not too light. The tone is pleasing to hear, whether you're just practicing acoustically or if you are recording. Of course, I'm a fan of guitars in general, so I do kind of like every single bodywood of each guitar I have. I do like the Basswood. I do like mahogany. That's classic. I do like the alder too, especially when alder ages. I like how that sounds. If I was going to have a signature guitar, though, I think I would put Basswood on it. Ash is pretty nice, too. It's pretty lightweight, but I think just the feel of the Basswood, coupled with me being an Ibanez fan, I think I would choose that if I was going to make a signature guitar. Maybe it would even be in this color. Or maybe it would be in the colors of my cat. And finally, in playing the guitar, you'll notice it does have the pickguard. Getting used to the feel of the pickguard, it took a little bit of time because I have this guitar, and then there's my first Prestige with the pickguard that I don't play it as often as I should. I did play it a bunch back in the day, and you can see I've gutted it multiple times. It doesn't have the stock pickups anymore. I've got the bare knuckle aftermaths. I've totally removed the tone knob, things like that. I probably wouldn't do that today, but it was fun. It was a fun little project. Definitely inspired by Paul Gilbert, just having the little volume at the end. Thing is, though, I don't really play this guitar too much because the neck on this is extremely thin. It's as thin as my J Custom, and it does fatigue my hand over time. So this guitar and other Prestiges I have, I know this is just made in Japan, but I'm kind of lumping it in with the other made in Japan Ibanez's. So yeah, this guitar and other Prestiges I have, like the more recent ones I've bought, they have this neck profile. It's not super thicker. It's a slight difference, but it is extremely comfortable to play, and I can play it all day. So the point then is that this is probably the first guitar in a long time I've had that's had a pickguard like this. And because of that, it does affect the feel of the play just a little bit. I had to relearn how to do pinch harmonics for like a few minutes or something, just because it was like, oh, whoa, that's a bit weird. I do have a Pia, and it does have a pickguard too, but the body shape is a bit different. It's a slightly thicker neck. It's got the kind of rounded edges. It is a little different. It's a different playing experience. So let's jump on over to talking about the quality of this guitar. The Trem itself has been pretty stable. I did note in the review of this video how remarkably stable it was when I was setting up the guitar. Even though I had to set up this guitar the most, the Trem took the least amount of effort to keep in the same setup position. Of course, I have to tune the guitar after heavy usage, but that's basically every single guitar ever. Of course, an Evertune would help with that, but even the mighty Evertune over time will go out of tune. It's just the nature of things, you know, it's a mechanical system. That being said, I probably am going to block the tremolo on this just because I'm not really a tremolo trick kind of player. I don't do really the dive bombs unless I'm like, oh, hey, check this out. I don't do really any of the squeals or the pull-up wails. Not because I dislike them, it just doesn't come out naturally in my playing and my, I guess, creative expression. Not trying to sound too pretentious here. But yeah, I just don't try to force it. And because of that, it would be nice to have a bit more tuning stability. Again, not saying that this is unstable by any means. So far, the recordings I've done with it, the bridge has been floating. It's not blocked or anything like that, and it's recorded just fine. Speaking of the Trem though, the Trem socket though has come loose. You can kind of see it's a bit loose right here. It's not sticking in place, but if you turn it a bit, it stays. And that's because the thing that's holding the Trem, it's loose if you turn it a certain way. I think it just needs some tightening up. And honestly, of all the things on the guitar to come loose, I'd rather pick that because, again, I don't really use the tremolo that much. So it's a whole lot better than a potentiometer coming loose or the output jack coming loose. It's a whole lot better than the pickup cutting out, too. The whole reason I don't use the other Basswood, the black RG with the Fishmans, it plays really well. I actually like it a lot. But the neck pickup is broken. It cuts out, and I just haven't had the time to go and fix it. Every day I have to balance what I'm going to do. Of course, I have the day job. I have to come home, have to practice guitar, have to think of videos to make, have to make music, work on releasing it, plan things out. And of course, there's other life things too. I have to do chores, vacuum, etc. There just isn't enough time in the day to have to fix up major issues, especially when you have a pile of guitars that you could just pick up instead and get things done. So for one thing to come loose, and that thing being just the socket that holds the Trem arm, it's like, okay, that's fine. And again, I would compare it to my first Prestige, but these are pretty different guitars at this point, just because extremely different pickups. No longer has the middle pickup, only one potentiometer, three-way switch, different neck profiles. Of course, all access joint versus the square heel, and I'll talk about that later. So let's round off this conversation now talking about the features. Of course, I've mentioned the Basswood body and the Trem arm together. The weights of those systems are basically perfect for me. It's not too heavy, it's not too light. It's a decent, balanced guitar. Put on top of that the classic forearm contour and the belly cut. It's a perfect fit, especially if you like super strats, the double cut super strats. Again, the pickguard gives it a different feel, so you do have to get used to that. If you're really sensitive to the height of the body versus the strings, if you need more space, Technically, the pickguard does add a few millimeters, so the strings are a little closer. Does it really matter that much? Maybe not. But if you know it matters to you, which is fine, these are tools for creating music. These are tools for our trade. So any small difference is going to be amplified over time since we put so much time and effort into perfecting our craft. For me, it's not too much of a big deal. But speaking of big deals, we got to talk about the square heel joint, the square neck heel, because it is kind of a bummer when I'm playing with it, whether I'm practicing with it, to hit that 24th fret, you do feel the square heel on your thumb. It does get in the way. And so I've been practicing just like trying to reach over, but you can already kind of see it's a weird stretch, even though my arm's in the way. Like it's a weird stretch. You can see I've even tried putting my thumb over it, and that is kind of helpful. But again, then you've got the thickness of the whole body plus the neck. Even if it is angled down, it's still not ideal. So I'm wondering, did they do this to create kind of an artificial difference between RGs? So you would spend the $500 more on a Prestige versus the Genesis? I don't know, because then I also got thinking too, you know how guitarists are. There's a lot of guitarists who furiously stick to more traditional features and specs. I'm not trying to knock anybody, I'm just stating facts. Things like the Stratocaster, the Les Paul, they keep selling for a reason, and people keep buying them. So that also gets you thinking too, does this neck heel back here, does it affect the tone somehow? Because like the tone and the sustain on this guitar are pretty dang good. Does that have to do with the square neck heel? And then that gets you thinking too, do I need the tone and sustain of a square neck heel if that's the case? Do I need the playability of the all-access neck joint? I think for me, I'm kind of leaning more towards I'd rather have the playability. I would sacrifice just a little bit of tone if there is a difference to be able to hit the top frets without thinking. Because if I do perform live, whether it's on maybe a stream that I'm doing on the internet that I might do soon, I've been thinking about it, or if I do play on a stage or something, I definitely don't want anything breaking my concentration or messing up any more than an audience would. And I think you guys, the viewers, most of you guys are going to probably agree with me based on the thought that the audience of a content creator typically is a reflection of the content creator themselves. So maybe you prefer that too. Maybe you can speak to the merits of the square neck heel, the square joint. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let's have a constructive conversation. So overall, what do I think about this guitar after reviewing it and playing it for a bit, after setting it up, tuning it, etc., restringing? Well, it's been a pretty reliable guitar. My first Basswood body guitar with a neck profile I super like that I could just pick up and practice on. There was the honeymoon phase when you get it and you see the color and it's like, wow. It's like a red-orange. It looks orange on camera, but in person, it's really hard to capture the true color. In person, it's this neon red-orange, and the shadows of it, you can kind of see a little bit of pink. And when you try to take phone pictures, sometimes it gets blown out. It's a really hard color to capture. So I love the look, I love the feel, love the sound, the playability, except the square neck heel, as I've mentioned. But again, it's not the end of the world. As long as I'm not playing a song where I'm up here a lot, or as long as I'm not practicing up here a lot, then this would be a guitar I would reach for. Especially because I have so many amazing options that have effortless access to these top frets. It wouldn't make sense if I'm playing up here a lot, or if I'm doing a lot of practice. If I'm straining my hand a lot against the square neck heel, that's gonna be kind of a non-starter. But for everything else, this guitar, I don't wanna say it's perfect, but I'm definitely really loving it. So there you have it. Those are my retrospective thoughts. Is there anything else you'd like to know about this guitar? Was this helpful? Please let me know in the comments down below. You know, this is YouTube, so I have to say the YouTube things, I'm sorry. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video, print out every frame and mail it. And as always, peace.